Live.
Good evening, everyone. I am India Oakes, Chair of the Annapolis Education Commission, and I'm calling our September 2021 meeting to order. Let's do roll call so we can confirm we have a quorum. Ward 1, Brianna Griffin. Ward 2, Jeff McChris.
I am present.
Ward 3, Enid Collison-E.
Present.
Ward 4, Kayla Golder.
Present.
Ward 5 is myself, India Oakes, and Ward 6 is vacant, and Laura Booth in Ward 7 had an excused absence, so on to Ward 8, Jessica Packler.
Present.
At-large member, Ken Starks.
Present.
At-large member, Odessa Ellis.
Present.
At-large member, Janet Norman.
I think she's here. She's just not as a panelist yet. I think that's her phone number in the waiting area. I mean, that is her phone number. Waiting area.
Hopefully that works. Janet Norman is here. Sorry. Can anybody hear me?
Yep, you're good.
Thanks.
An older person, Sheila Thunleisen. And non-voting member, Pam Bukowski. Great, we have a quorum. Moving on, does anyone have anything to add to the agenda?
Oh, you know what? Okay. Am I on the agenda for talking about the filters at the school? I have to look at the agenda.
Yeah, I haven't seen the agenda. I didn't know if food and nutrition services this year is on the agenda.
I can share the agenda if you'd like me to.
Under purifiers, food is not, so we can add that.
Is the, am I on the agenda for the filters?
The air purifiers, yes, you are. Can you
Oh,
see the?
okay.
Okay, since city code requires any changes to the agenda to be by unanimous consent, I will save time in voting and just ask, is there any objection to the agenda as it is now?
No objection.
No objection.
Hearing no objection, agenda stands as amended. Moving to approval of the minutes. Do we have a motion to approve both the June and August minutes?
I think we should take them separately.
I don't know if that qualifies as a meeting, but to hear the testimony of a school shooting survivor, every year that's what they do. So I've had the opportunity to hear a young lady from Virginia Tech, a mother from St. Luke, the principal, former principal of Columbine, and I think
Okay, do we have a motion for the June minutes?
I make a motion that we accept the June minutes as written.
things that we don't consider that we
I'll second the motion.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of the minutes?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? June minutes are approved. Any motion for the August minutes?
I motion to approve the August minutes.
I second.
in the gym, in the locker room, in this classroom, and
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Looks like everyone said aye, so minutes are approved. I am not aware of any public comment submitted or in attendance, and Dr. Tobin is not here, so we will jump to committee reports, starting with anything from the charter school or target program committee.
Well, I haven't done any work for the charter school committee. I think right now everything is just being suspended. So maybe in the future, but right now I'm not working on trying to get a charter school here. We need it, but right now I'm not doing that. So there's no report for the charter school. I think Sheila Finlayson works with that also, but I haven't talked to her about that.
Okay, thanks. Any update from the Low Performance and Proficiency Levels Committee? Okay, anything from career pipeline and vocational preparation?
This is Janet Norman, and I would just add my repeated plea for all members of the Education Commission to join the Annapolis High School PTSA Facebook page, where our signature program coordinator, Becky Burr-Hogan, posts a number of job and career and technical training opportunities practically every week. And we hope that you could amplify those into other forums and send out to people. I'm concerned that with the record number of jobs available to be filled, that perhaps our students are still not getting the technical training or CAT South opportunities or other things in order to capitalize and know about these jobs and find rewarding career paths. Thank you.
Any update from the Bilingual Facilitators and Support for English Language Learner Families Committee?
We have a new bilingual facilitator at Annapolis High School. I shared that information with that fantastic PTSA group, and I hope everybody takes a chance to get to know them. I mean, I think right now there hasn't been any other update than that.
So
Jess,
just,
is that a second? Is that a second bilingual facilitator for the school?
No,
Because I know
I'm not.
that,
I'm not actually
Ms.
sure. Kenny,
Torres.
do you know the answer? Is that a second one or is that just a replacement of the previous one?
Yes, I believe that's a replacement of Monica Ramirez.
oh, she's
Who
not
was
there?
there. Unless she's not there. I haven't seen her. I've seen her in the beginning of the year, and then lately I see a new person in her office. So I'm not clear on if it's two or one.
Oh,
So
okay.
I won't speculate either way. But I know that
isn't there
the beginning of the
Hilda?
year it was Monica Ramirez, and I don't know who's there. I don't know the young lady.
And the Transportation Committee?
Well, it's been a really fun month in transportation in the Annapolis cluster.
Good God.
So I can say that as the transportation chair, when the issues with the bus systems and plans or problems arose on that fantastic Wednesday, the first day of school, I immediately reached out to the city and to see what we could do in terms of trying to, somehow get city buses are in action or the rec department buses in action, anything that we could do. Obviously, I think everyone is well aware that the bus driver issue in Anne Arundel County affected the Annapolis cluster more than anyone else, and particularly affected our lower income neighborhoods who may have a tendency to lack alternative transportation more than anyone else in the cluster. So it has obviously been a big problem. It is still a big problem. I offered, we've done a lot of research, obviously, as a commission and as the committee on the various bus times and the bus routes. And I offered the Annapolis Education Commission to be a resource in those discussions, but that was not, the city and the school system were not interested. In our assistance. I think that's something, we really do need to discuss, with the city. I mean, that's our job. That's our role as the commission, is to be a resource and a connection. And, if we're not being utilized in that, I'm not really sure what the point is, because it is really important, right? And, we know better than anyone else that you can't just hop on a city bus and get to Annapolis High School, right? That's been something that we've been discussing for as long as I've been on the commission, for activity buses, for everything else. It's not easy. And even I think the routes that were created, I mean, it's great that we have routes that are created, but they're long, they're not easy. And I'm not really sure how many kids are actually taking them, because I've asked multiple times for information on how many kids, have been absent and have not received that information. I would like to get that information just as a whole to figure out what is going on. I think I am in the middle of crafting an email just on my own, but I think one of the big issues is really the communication side of things. So, we get these 3 text messages and emails a day that you have to go to a link that pulls up a PDF, and not everybody can access PDFs on their phones, particularly the families who are probably most affected by the bus situation. And sometimes the things change. I'm not really understanding why in 2021 we don't have what so many other school systems in the country have, which is a way to just identify, okay, if you live in, for example, Eastport, your bus is not coming. So everybody who lives in Eastport is going to get this notification and say, okay, the bus 42, you may or may not ride the bus, but you should get that notification, especially when the buses, it's one thing if bus 80 hasn't run the entire time, but when bus 48 to 42 runs some days and then doesn't run some days, or runs in the morning but doesn't run in the afternoon, that's relying on the PDF is not a functional option for anybody. It's not for families. It's not for kids. Kids aren't supposed to have phones in school. Not all kids have phones. So how are they supposed to know whether they're going to get on the bus or have their parents pick up? We've had multiple kids lost across the cluster in the elementary school level. We have kids walking home. Obviously, there was, the story about the kid who was walking home down Aris T. Allen, which is just awful. That any child, I don't want to walk down Aris T. Allen. I don't think a child should, certainly. But I haven't seen much. It sounds like we're just where we are, and the school system is sort of, this is where we are and we're going to do. And I'm not okay with that, but I'm not sure that anything's going to change. At the last board meeting, Ms. Tobin asked if there was going to be any future change, or if there was going to be any, recompense for the problems, if they were going to be addressed with the management and leadership of the transportation department. And the answer was basically no. And so I think that's a problem. And I don't see how, it's been a month. I don't see how this can continue, and I don't see why it's being allowed to continue. And I think it's something that we as a commission and that we as a city need to say something about. These are our kids, and these are our kids that are being left behind. It's just a problem. And then it's also a problem in that it's so crowded, and we are still in a pandemic, and we are still at COVID, and the buses, the bus drivers have so much on their plates as it is. And then, so they're not able to do seating charts, and the school system isn't allowing them to do seating charts, or isn't providing them the technology or the resources to do seating charts. So when COVID arises, as it is doing, there's no way to find out, there's no way to do contact tracing, because they don't even know who's on the bus. And, this is, I know I'm speaking to people, we've all been talking about this, but this is something we've been discussing for a very long time. And I just find it incredibly irresponsible that we don't know who's on a bus. If that tornado had come through during school and during, while school buses were driving down West Street and it hit one of those buses, we would have no way of knowing who was on that bus, because there is no tracking. And that it is 2021. It's absurd, right? It is just absurd that we don't have the technology in place to do that. So that's all I have to say. That wasn't very helpful necessarily, other than to say, this is our city. I know the city doesn't have much to do with the school system, but I think we need to do more than we are. I think we need to. In the long term, once we change the start times, I would really like the city to sit down. I would really like to encourage the city, for us to encourage the city to sit down and look at the bus stop times once we, because we're going to change school times. There's no point in changing the bus stop times now if we're going to change the school times maybe in January, but look and make sure that, if Annapolis Middle School starts at 8:30, the bus doesn't get, the bus that comes from any of the areas in the sorry for my dog, in the area, doesn't get to Annapolis Middle School at 8:45 or get there at 7:45, right? We should work on making it functional for everybody. As somebody who grew up riding the DC buses to school on occasion, because I went to school in Georgetown, I know how useful it is to have those city buses, and I think we should have them here. So that's for the long term.
Thank you, Jess. I totally agree that this is completely unacceptable dysfunction and should not be allowed to continue a day longer. That the handling of this situation has thrown chaos to so many parents. And this has got to be an accountability. They can't just shrug their shoulders and say, oh, well, we'll sort it out in a month or two. This needs to be a stop order and function immediately. And we as a commission should not tolerate this level of dysfunction.
Particularly given
all you've done.
Yeah, I would say particularly given that there's no alternative. If a student's stuck at home, there's no, given what we've been through last year, there should be a way to turn on a camera so that student can at least sit in the classroom. I'm not saying the teacher has to teach what we did last year with hybrid or teach it, but a student should be able to peer into the classroom and hear what's going on. And it's not happening. You don't get your virtual tutor until you're quarantined for 10 days. And as far as I can tell, if you're part of the bus crowd and not getting to school, there's no help. And that's ridiculous. We clearly have the technology to bring students from home into the classroom, and we need to be utilizing it, because if we're not providing them transportation and then we're also not providing them access to education, what is the point? Like, what is the point?
Right. We just had this huge effort for the opportunity gap report, and it is sitting there useless on a shelf if they are not doing actions that meet the needs of students to get them access to learning. So why spit into the wind and produce these useless reports if CPS administration is not going to follow through with actions?
Well, may I?
I want to, can I say one thing real quick? I'm sorry.
Sure.
I was listening to Jess, and she said something. She said, and it impacts the communities that need the resources the most. And then you hear, and then you got to hear me. You hear, if you don't catch the bus, you can't get to school, because we didn't send you a bus. Not because you missed the bus. We didn't send you a bus. And then we got a, oh well, because we're not going to provide any education either. And we're a month or so into this. And my question, and I'm being honest, and I'm speaking from a different lens, I guess. And to me, if I was foreign to all of this, I would come in and say, oh, this is intentional. This is intentional. And it's cross for me to speak, right? Because of my occupation. But when I see this, I'm like, you're not busting your butt, working 74 hours a day or anything. There's just, and then it's like notification at 1 o'clock that your bus may or may not come. It's to me, I just know it wouldn't happen. It couldn't happen to all, but it is. It's literally happened because now every community is being impacted because of this one piece of, I guess, handled. To say it the nicest way, it's handled badly, and it's embarrassing coming from this component, coming from the school system. It is embarrassing, to be honest.
I
But
agree.
I don't
And I
see
agree
a
it feels
future.
intentional.
So I have a couple of questions. One is, in regards to what you're saying about being intentional, Ken. Is this happening like in other places, Severna Park? Is this happening in other places other than Annapolis with the buses not showing up and et cetera? And my second question is, the young kid that the email was about that you were referring to, Jess, that was walking on RST Island Boulevard. How did he get away from school walking? I mean, there's some other
Because
responsibility there.
if you're not in first
There's
grade,
walkers.
you can leave school. You're a walker and you leave school.
Mm.
They don't make you stay at school if you don't have somebody pick you up. Many of our students walk home without an adult.
So you're saying that he was a walker anyway?
Well, I don't know his particular case, but I know
There are walkers.
there are walkers, and that unless you're in kindergarten, pre-K kindergarten, I think first grade, you can go without an adult there. And in regards to your earlier question, yes, it is happening in other school districts. It is not happening to the extent that it's happening, and it's happened in the Annapolis district, and it is not happening to the low-income communities or areas, right? The areas that are most affected in Annapolis are different than the areas in the other.
And it will be important that we try and make sure that there's a family counselor at the school.
But I don't know what to do about it. I mean, I think we've all yelled, we've all testified, we've all written letters, and it just seems to be, oh, well, we just have to wait. We won't give you any alternative education. We won't, we hope that you can find somebody to give you a ride to school, which is okay in some areas, but it's certainly not in many.
Also, those problems, or this is how when you come to our family council meeting,
I will say I still don't understand why they can't switch the drivers they do have to the buses most in need. Any other comments on transportation?
Yeah, I don't know if they can be more flexible because of the number of different contractors and the fact that the Annapolis bus company that services our area was much harder hit with lack of drivers and stuff than the other contract serviced areas. But I do know that transportation department knew of this up to 3 or more weeks ahead of school and failed completely to notify the parents with adequate advance warning. And that is inexcusable. That should not be tolerated and feels like intentional neglect. Thank you.
If anyone has any ideas on how we as a commission or the transportation group can help, I'd be more than happy to work with anybody and try to move this forward. On a less negative note, Wednesday is walk and bike to school day. So if your schools are doing that, please participate. It's a fun day.
Okay, moving on. Anyone have an update about from the school start times committee?
No update that we know of. Just a reminder that the national PTA policy that they expect all PTAs to promulgate through their chapters is to advocate for 8:30 or later high school start times, and that to do so beforehand is damaging to our students' teachers. Thank you.
And I don't think we had time to do much with everything going on these first 4 weeks of school, but anything from the newly formed PTA Collaboration Committee?
No, I mean, I have been speaking with some of the various PTAs. I think after today's incident, I think it's, even more important that we all, get together and talk and try to figure out how we can work together. Obviously this incident today puts a bad light on our school, on our cluster, and on our high school. And it's an unfortunate light. I think, I, as I mentioned to someone earlier today, I love Annapolis High School. I've only been there as a parent for 13 days or however many it is, but I love it. And, does today concern me? Obviously it concerns me. Is there an increase in violence at high schools across the country right now because we're coming out of a year and a half where people haven't been in school and haven't had to socialize with other people? Yes, that's happening. Am I happy with the way it was characterized during the press release today, as though this was a giant surprise to everybody? No, I'm not happy about that, because I would really like to have thought that our superintendent was aware of the issue and was working to take care of the issue, not was completely surprised when this happened today. But I think all as a whole, our PTAs need to, work together, because I think this is going to be one of those things. Oh, it's the Annapolis cluster, and it's not the Annapolis cluster. It is part of society. It is specific kids having beefs with each other, and how do we handle those beefs? It's not all of Annapolis High School. It's not all of one particular community or one other particular community. It's a societal issue that we need to deal with on an individual basis. And I think, you know, today was just really hard, I think, for everybody, right? And again, these are all of our kids who are being affected by not being able to get to school or having to find rides or, you know, get to school late. And I mean, it all plays into it, right? If you're in a school where you feel like people don't care about you because they can't even get you on a bus to get you to school, of course you're going to have beefs with other people, and you're going to bring them to school, and you're going to be disgruntled by the world. I mean, it's, you know, and you're crowded and you're supposed to be worrying about COVID, but then you're crowded in hallways and no one's worrying about COVID. I mean, you know, there's a lot going on for our kids. And I think I just want that to be the message, and not that Annapolis High School is a bad school, right?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, because if on social media was going around after the first like week and a half, 2 weeks, that Old Mill along with Meade High School had about 17 fights in the span of that time. But because those schools aren't the capital, not next to the Board of Ed, they're not going to highlight the problems. And then you have schools like Northeast, they're having issues. And I think it's really unfair that like they're highlighting it like we're the sole problem in the county, and we're just not. And I think I definitely agree with you that George Olata should have known there have been multiple fights happening that led up to this fight, because it was known to the student body. So for me, I knew I was speculative to what had happened, because I was in a situation where my homeroom teacher didn't show up or was late. So I went to guidance to ask my guidance counselor about a question, and I was instructed to go like get away from the front lobby, and the doors were locking, so I couldn't go to class. So I was stuck outside of the school because I went to sit in my car with my friends. So we were all witnessing it from the outside. And I think, yeah, it was scary, but I think the school handled it extremely well given the circumstances, because the adults handled it great. Like from the videos I saw with the school, they made sure people were separated. So the only people were involved that were those that were in the fight, and the fact that it seemed like everyone was calm. I was calm. My parents weren't freaking out because the school had gotten it under control, which I think to me, as a student, it makes me feel safe, because it's like, this is a serious matter, but they got it under control where people walked away with minor, not, I guess you call it minor injuries, because they weren't life-threatening, but we don't know the degree. From what I saw from one of the kids who was carted off, he seemed fine. They walked him out. He went to the hospital. But obviously, I think they made it on the news. They made it more than I think it really needed to be amped up to be. And I think I really would like to condemn like the resource officers and the wonderful job that they did to break up the fight along with the teacher, because who knows, what if the teacher didn't see the knife, that what else could have happened. But I think they handled it really well. I wasn't scared. I wasn't nervous. I'd never returned back to class, but from what I saw, I did have to wait like an hour and a half to get back into school. But granted, they were taking their time to handle the situation properly. So thank you, Mr. Stark, and your team for what.
Yes, let me, can I say something? I want to say something, and I'm not going to go into detail because I was there. I was part of it, right? I grew up in DC, where in the 80s and then in the early 90s, where it became a lot of violence, and I've seen a lot. I was in that era, and I've seen so much violence. Today was a little scary, to be honest. And when I mean scary, and I definitely agree with Kayla 1000%, the response and the energy that was put forth in the teamwork and collaborative effort from AHI to everyone involved was amazing, hands down. it doesn't take away the fact that anything could have gone wrong, right? And bigger than that issue, I believe you can't send every kid back to school, every adult back to school after a year and a half without how are you feeling or something. It's no, we keep skating around mental health and mental illness and these topics, but it's no way like today, and it's not attributed to this fight. These kids were walking around before the first fight ever happened. And I say, hey, how you doing? Honestly, Starks, I am so scared. And I know I got an idea. What are you afraid of? I don't know. This isn't right. This it just wasn't natural for them. I had kids just fall in my arms and just cry. First couple of days of school. That's the reality. And they're not getting any help. There's nothing. And then we shoved them back with no zero compassion, zero compassion to say, hey, you may not be doing well. You're in the high school, middle school level. You're okay with your grades. We're going to give you a hybrid alternative. There was no meeting people in the middle. Then, through the history of everything that happens in Annapolis in this cluster alone, we have to understand what's happening in our neighborhoods. We have to know that. And to be honest, it was all over social media. Everyone, and then the piece is this. The scary part is, unfortunately, our school system provide a place where they all can meet, where they can't meet on the outside because you're not going to that place because it's a different outcome, unfortunately. And it's not the school's fault. You got to hear me. It's not the school's fault because kids have to go back to school. All these things are true. But we have to dive a little deeper. And instead of saying we're hard pressed to go in this direction, we have to morph. And the equity piece has to be revisited in the lens of this. Equity for you may not be equity for me. So that means because we have a different dynamic in our cluster, our school is different, not only in our cluster, Lord, we have one school for over 2,000 kids. It's a perfect storm. I'm sorry. I know I'm preaching and I know I'm this, but when you talk about these first couple weeks of school, we just followed, okay, we can go back to school, we can do this, and we just zero back to where we were instead of any thought of where we're going to be. We're walking around in masks, so we're not back to normal. That alone signifies we're not back to normal. There's kids in COVID, there's issues in school. There's a sixth grade class out of entire middle school out here. So these things are happening, and we're walking around as if it isn't. There's teachers who are quitting. There's everything, all of these things. Eventually, we have to say, okay, what do we have to do to begin to get back on track? And that's all. We cannot sit here and say we're on track.
I agree.
I'm sorry.
Mr.
Because I
Starks.
feel- yeah.
Yeah, can I say something? I agree with Mr. Starks. It seems as though to me, it should have been a transitional stage, some kind of way from being out almost 2 years to coming back into the school. I was telling someone today and a couple of days ago that one of those students' mother just passed away a month ago. The mother was found dead in the kitchen a month ago. So it's a lot of trauma that these kids have seen over that year and a half. They've seen grandparents dying from COVID, parents dying from any other thing. It's just been, so when I hear Dr. Alado and people saying, well, it's a community thing. Well, we need to figure out what's going on in these communities. And we don't dig deep. We just assume that these kids can come back into the school, mother dead, father, dying. People are dying in those communities, their loved ones.
And you also have to take into consideration, it's been 2 years. These are children
Right.
who were in middle school.
Right.
Now supposed to function in a high school environment. The trouble you got in a fight for middle school is a different degree that you're going to get when you go to high school. When you're in middle school and you get in a fight, you get like a suspension. Now you're facing charges. You are facing charges that are going to follow you for the rest of your life. And I know one of the students, and multiple students, because there was a lot of people from my grade. And it's disappointing to me to see where they were in ninth grade and the effect that these neighborhoods have on them in their lives, because they were set on a track. There are some who have gone to jail during COVID that I've known who were on the fast track like me, but fell into it with these, if you want to say gangs, these neighborhood, this lifestyle that they find attractive because it's fast money. Their friends are in it. And that's what the culture, unfortunately, is in some of these neighborhoods, that they don't understand the severity of these things. I'm an analytical thinker. So when I heard about this, my first thing was, do they understand the charges that are going to be brought upon them with assault with a deadly weapon, assault there, and then assault, and then bringing a deadly weapon into school, which is another charge. It's multiple charges adding up that these kids don't realize. They don't pay attention to the law. There's not mandatory law classes to teach them about, if this is what you do, this is what's going to happen. So you have a bunch of kids thrown in from middle school not knowing that, hey, you're expected to be an adult now. And unfortunately, there was no introduction to this. So they're coming from a middle school life and not truly understanding that, hey, you're going to be treated like a grown-up now, and you need to be able to handle it. And I think the school could have done a lot better with dealing with mental health. And honestly, if you think about it, when my sophomore year, Annapolis High had barely any fights. So you have to make some sort of connection of what is happening with everyone returning back into why these fights have happened. And I truly believe that's a large part, because I was talking to my neighbors who barely finished or transferred. And I'm like, Annapolis High didn't have this problem 2 years ago. It's solely, I feel like, attributed to the just trying to jump back into school. I understand the importance of school. Trust me, in person is way better for me, but not everyone, I don't think, is able to handle that without some sort of guidance. So,
especially when they've lost so many loved ones. This has been a lot of deaths.
Well,
so
and
you're losing parents. So who's watching you at home? Now you're on to grandparents' custody. So now you're doing a lot by yourself.
And on top of all that, I found it really glaring during the press conference today. We are just so excited to have people back in school 5 days a week. But in our cluster, more so than anywhere else, a lot of our families are hourly workers, right? They depend on hourly wages, and they don't have paid time off. They don't have sick leave, right? They don't have the things that other families might have. And so when you're forced to go in 5 days a week, and then you're concerned that you're going to bring home COVID to your family, or you're going to get somebody sick, or you've already lost a family member, and now you might get other family members sick, right? That's a whole level of concern and worry that just doesn't seem to be taken into the yay, we're back in school 5 days a week, right? Because
it's too much focus on that.
There's no focus on that. And that's not fair. When we talk about equity, that's not fair to our clusters, to our students, to our families who can't afford to get sick, right? They can't afford, they needed that transition. I need to wait until it's a little bit safer, until it's not spreading as rapidly, until there's a vaccine for my younger children, because I can't afford to take off 10 days from my job to quarantine with my unvaccinated third grader who just got exposed. And now I have to be home with them. That's not a fair option for so many of our families. And, and that again is part of the whole weighing concern on our students and on our families, particularly our high school kids, who in a lot of cases, they are, in some cases, the adults or the next to adults in their families, and they're responsible for those smaller children and everything. And I just don't think any of that has really been considered.
We needed that Wednesday off for mental sakes. And I was talking to my principal, and he definitely agreed. He was like, there needs to be this homeroom wellness thing. It's not enough for kids. We're not paying attention to that. Like, I understand the effort that's put into it, but I honestly don't think it's capturing the attention that it needs to for people to take their mental health seriously, because it is a huge issue. Like, I know I haven't been struggling with the school aspect, but the result of school and trying to apply to college, and these teachers understandably doing their job, but they're throwing us into, oh, it's just work now. We're doing homework, tests, and it's just like, hold on, I'm just now getting equated back to school. And it's stressing me out that I'm expected to do all this work and now have to figure out how to apply to college at the same time. It's a lot for kids our age to handle, especially you have to think about the fact that some of these children are applying to college by themselves. They've got to try and figure this out by themselves because they're not lucky like me to have a support system to help them and proofread their work to make sure they're meeting the deadlines, filling out the FAFSA information. There's a lot of stuff that is just not being taken into consideration that I feel like needs to.
You're
And
right.
what kind of-
I had a student call me up. I'm not working, guys. I'm not at the school. I'm at home on family
Okay.
medical leave. But I had a student call me up Monday in tears, crying, because she felt like she wasn't getting that much help and support from the guidance office to help her to maneuver through these the college thing, you know.
Mhm.
And so I sent her to Miss Great, the AVID teacher, and she calmed her down and got her going. But this student was a senior. She was just crying, break it down in tears, crying.
That's a great point. What support staff? Janet brought this up earlier. Today, what support staff? Did we get the extra social worker that we were supposed to? Do we have the support
Not
staff?
extra. Do we have a replacement for Ms. Hamaker who left? Does anyone who's at the school right now know who our current social worker is? Ms.
Yes,
Hamaker left.
yes. We do have
Who
a
is it?
social worker. It's Mueller, I believe, from
Okay.
came from Phoenix. So we
Thank
do have
you,
one.
Ken.
She's awesome.
Thank you, Ken. But
She is
for the
awesome. I will say that.
the last several years, Annapolis High PTSA has formally written to the Board of Ed saying, we desperately need an additional social worker. Don't talk to us about elevating all students and closing all gaps without putting it where it counts and providing us an additional social worker, additional resources, the community ambassadors, things like that. We've submitted that to the board and the county council for 2 years in a row and gotten zilch on that. So their spending priorities are, unfortunately, and our current counselor ratios, if we have our 7 counselors that we do have, that's 315 students per counselor. And Kayla and Odessa are completely right about the incredible hoops and bureaucracy and hardship of applying to college. It is absolutely bewildering. Even me with, huge bureaucracy skills, it's super hard to do. And so many kids are struggling to do it on their own. So
Yeah, and also
we need more.
And now, Mr. Starks, you can tell me if I'm right or wrong, but I'm figuring after today's situation, they're going to take Panther Hour away, which is going to be a whole nother problem in and of itself, because now it's going to be the struggle of figuring out how to meet with your teachers again, because we don't know when we'll have it back if they are taking it away, because we've had it taken away for, I guess, less severe situations. So I'm thinking they're taking it away.
But are they taking it away because of the crowd in the hallways? I know that's what I'm told, how crowded the hallways are.
Well, the hallways are crowded at most schools. So that's not the situation. I'm solely specific to the violence part of the aspect of what happened today.
I'd be willing to entertain to put forth a motion asking that they not take away Panther Hour. I think if we're going to take away the one thing that the students need and gives them that extra time to talk to a teacher or get the help that they need, I think doing that because of what happened today seems to be completely, there's a word I'm looking for, but
I do, like, as much as I want it, I understand the thinking that the staff needs to take in place, because the problem with Panther Hour is it's giving kids time to meet. That's the problem with it. It's not a short change. It's you oftentimes, no matter, the adults do well trying to make sure kids are in classrooms. That's the problem. It's the transitional time period. And with them seeing the, what is the word I'm looking for? The retaliation. I think they're fearful of a retaliation, and they don't want the student body to have to deal with another sense of trauma, I feel like, due to something else breaking out. So I think it's more of a safety precaution as much as I want it and feel like it's needed. They haven't announced it, granted, because it just happened today, but I'm thinking tomorrow, you can tell me if that's what they're talking about, Mr. Starks, or not, but that's what me and most of the student body believe is going to happen.
I'll say this. I don't know, because I'm not in those discussions, in the discussions. I will say, I would say logically, probably for Thursday and Friday, move, because it's going to be a different flow. It's going to be a different presence in the school. So that's to be expected, right? And then that gives everyone time, because when something like this happens, whether it's expected or unexpected, we need to gather ourselves, right? And everyone needs to gather themselves from top down in that piece. And that's going to take, that process is going to happen. I will say this. I'll say this. As far as our actual AHI staff from top down, I'm in complete confidence on what they can do and their ability. I'm gonna be 100% honest.
Yeah, and the teachers are really supportive. Like, I've talked to teachers, and they're like, if you need anything, let me know.
Yeah.
Like, I will help
It's
you.
a
And
trying time.
yeah,
It's flexible, right?
and I think it
So, and I think
provides
all
a
of that.
sense of comfort that, like, the teachers are willing to help you and see it. And I think that's a great job on AHI's part, to have teachers who are willing to be there for students.
I also want to thank all the teachers that made everybody feel so comfortable and safe when that happened. I mean,
Yes.
Jeff, I want to say this moment today, I'm going to be honest, it's crazy and it's frightening and scary and all of these crazy adjectives you can throw on it. It also brought a one Annapolis I've never seen before. We were on one accord. And I'll be honest, when that sun comes up after that stormy day or week, that sun looks so much different and brighter and better than it ever has before. So if I'm looking for the opportunity, if I'm looking for the good in this, I would have to say the opportunity is what we can do from this, and the relationships and the strength and the camaraderie that the staff built, and the trust that the kids built within us,
Yeah.
right? And that they know now they have a safe haven. And
yeah,
that's what I would say from it.
I think that's a great point. And also, from being outside of the building, not only did the teachers handle it so well, making sure, like, making a safe space around to make sure no one, it didn't get escalated, but the Annapolis Police Department and the Board of Ed literally came flying. Like, they were there to try and settle it. Like, I saw cops dropping things because of how fast they were trying to move to ensure that they got this under control. And like Mr. Stark said, I think this brought, as sad as it brought the community closer. Just seeing that the support and the way the school reacted was just amazing. So.
I would love to hear of how we can help on the PTA side. You know, I'm a member of the PTSA at Annapolis High School, but on the other PTAs, you know, what can we do as the community? And I think that word is really important, because I've been discussing it with some friends, because, you know, in the letter that was sent out in Dr. Arlotto's press release, the word, you know, it came from the community. And I want to make sure that when we use that word, we mean the whole community, because sometimes that word is used to refer to just certain communities. And I want to make sure that when we're talking about the community, we're talking about the whole Annapolis High School community, all of the students, all of the teachers, all of the neighborhoods, all of the parents, all of the guardians and friends and everybody. and that we're not blaming any one particular community, because I think it's really important that, as you said, Ken, it's one Annapolis, and we need to be in all of this together, regardless of where we're from, regardless of what we look like or what language we talk or anything. This is our school, and this is my kid's school, right? It's all of our school. And I think it's really important. And I think that's why I brought it up during the PTA discussion, right? Because all of our PTAs, all of our younger schools, they all lead up to this one school. And I think, it's important. We are
Well,
one Annapolis.
and-
Jess, can I say something quick? Jess, can you mention the problems with the communications from AACPS in Spanish today, which I also find completely
That is actually a issue today. So there were two communiques. There was a at 9. I don't have it pulled up just right this second. Hold on one sec. At whatever time it was, 9:30, when it went out to the families. And the English language one said, school is currently on lockdown due to several fights that have taken place this morning. Students are all in classrooms and are safe and supervised at this time. At this time, no one is allowed in or out of the building. Please do not come to the school to pick up your student. That was the text message that went out to all English speaking families. And anybody who's on the list and obviously text messaging is the quickest and easiest way, right? There were phone messages that went out and emails that went out, but the text message. The Spanish message said, Escuela cerrada debido a múltiples peleas. I didn't say that right because I'm very tired of the long day. That translates to school is closed due to multiple fights. That was all our Spanish speaking families got via text message. And that
Wow, that's
is not
bad.
okay. Right? That is not okay. And
No.
this is, we continuously have a problem in our school with our language communications. All of the videos that the school system puts out with Dr. Alato, none of them come out in Spanish. They don't come out, they're not translatable, they're not closed caption. The Board of Ed meetings aren't closed captions in a translatable way. Reaching out to our whole community needs to be our whole community. And that's, a whole nother discussion, but anyway, I think that particular was a fail today, because I think, Kayla, you probably saw parents did start showing up, right? There were parents that went because all of the Spanish speaking families.
Oh yeah, no, I saw.
that-
That's why I told my mom when I came home after an hour and a half of being outside that I saw a Hispanic woman with a lunchbox and her little kid, and I was confused because I assumed, because I called my mom from knowing, and then she got the message that they were on lockdown. So I assumed that the message went out that we were in lockdown. So I was confused as to why people's parents were coming so early to pick them up, because lockdown means
You got
lockdown.
the
There's
text.
no one's going in or out unless it's like you're like a police officer or a detective. Like there's only certain people that are allowed in that building. There is no getting out. Trust me, I know people who tried to get out and there was no getting out. They kept it locked down. So
Yeah.
Well,
The word that-
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Nadessa.
Okay, I'm glad to hear, that there was so much unity in one Annapolis and everything. But as I sit here right now, there's a special on Channel 13 about Annapolis High School. So how are we going to change the image of all of this that's going on? I mean, I know that it may not have been as serious as the press or the media is making it appear to be, but we still have some things that we need to really face as far as the communities and the struggles and the trauma and stuff and things that's going on, because we don't want this to get any worse than what it actually happened today. I'm thankful that it wasn't as bad. It could have been worse.
Yeah.
So
Real quick, I want to say this. Let me say this real quick.
Mhm.
And Mr. Dusty, you're 100% correct. Yeah, it was a moment, but here it is. Here's a reality. We have to have a starting point, right? And this is our starting point. And now I promise you, I have the utmost confidence that this will not be ignored and this will not be just left alone. I promise that. I can promise that without even not being at the table. I know that this cannot, because everyone understands. No matter what was said, no matter what was whatever, Everyone understands the severity of today and how it led up and all of those factors. That will not be denied. So now I do have the faith that these things will happen and things will start coming. And now what you're talking about, Miss Odessa, is the deeper, is the root of it all. Because Miss Just said it. She said that letter said school closed today because it was some fights. And I almost want to throw in, get out of here and take your lunch and go sit in the corner. Because that's the tone of that. And just listen, how do you expect the people in a community that's treated in that manner, that don't hold positions, to ever believe in themselves when the place where you become successful is full with people who tell you get out of here and you're not worthy.
Yeah,
And that's repeated. So when that is the case, you have people who this is inevitable. And unfortunately, Jeff said it. We used to throw that community word around, myself included, as individualism. We used to talk about our personal communities. Right now, that's, in the kids' words, that's dead. Because now we are one community, because we're all in the same place. And one thing I do know is foolishness doesn't have pickiness, meaning it won't pick and choose. It will wipe down wherever it comes. And whoever's in that weight will get destroyed. So now it's a concerned effort by every community. And I'm telling you, the narrative, I'll take that narrative, because I'll take that narrative as a challenge to build this one community. And then in a year or two, you can redo that story and say, whoa, look what this day brought and look where we are now. Because I look at it like this, there has to be an opportunity, because this cannot continue to happen.
yeah, I agree with Mr. Starks. I
The
think
other thing,
especially with the charges that were released and what they said, I think it's gonna be a wake-up call. I think it's hopefully it'll be a wake-up call, unfortunately, that it had to take this, but for people to understand, like, this is not what we come to school for. We come to school to learn, and I think it's gonna be taken very seriously, and that there's gonna be a lot of work put into actually being one community, because this is something that affected us all. And I think especially with the translation, that needs to be something, because we cannot claim to be a community and we are going to mislead a group of people that we know are at a disadvantage because they cannot read the English version. We need to make sure that the translation is as close as to what is, because granted, not everything in Spanish translates to how we say it in English, but we need to make sure they get the proper information so that they don't feel like their kids are just being like, oh, we'll take your kids. You need to come figure out how to get your kid. If they usually you come pick them up, you need to drop everything you're doing and find out, and then come to find out you can't even get your kid. Like I think hopefully there will be a lot of steps to build relationships and come together, because that's something that I think we need to do to, like Mr. Stark said, to a year from now, hopefully change the narrative of
I-
the situation.
what
I
I
agree
wanted to
with
ask was about
Kayla and Ken. Go ahead, Enid, go ahead.
okay, I wanted to ask, Miss Odessa showed me on Saturday a video of Annapolis High between classes, when the bell rings and the kids are exchanging classes. It looked like the kids were shoulder to shoulder from wall to wall.
Yes.
What is the capacity of Annapolis High School, and how many students are presently there? How overpopulated is the school? And number two, is that adding to the problem? Because it certainly can't be helping it.
I don't know the exact capacity, but I do know there's about 2,200 and some odd kids in Annapolis High School.
Right.
As a population, yes, the hallways are very crowded, especially the first couple of days. I was like, in fact, walking on someone else's feet. But I think as time has gone on, the hallway crowdedness has gotten better. It's not as crowded, I think, because people know where they're going now. It's not as crowded as it was the first couple of days. but it's as crowded as it was before we went into lockdown. If that answers your question around social distancing, like, yes, we are still shoulder to shoulder. There's not much, honestly, that Mr. Jelinas and the administrators can do, because we got to walk to class, and the amount of time it would take to dismiss class by class and 6 feet apart or 3 feet apart, however you want to make it, it's going to take too long.
There's no way that that could possibly be done with the number of kids I saw in those hallways. So what I'm asking is,
when the picture she showed you, was it the picture of, it was around the auditorium? Was it by the auditorium and cafeteria? Because I know that,
for the record, that picture was passed on to me. It was on someone's Facebook page.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I'm thinking it's that story. That was
The same picture.
that was the first day of Panther Hour. So you had a bunch of people going to one specific location. So I think that's what made it look a lot. Yeah. It was, everyone was trying to go to the auditorium and cafeteria, which are right next to each other, and they hold a great deal of people. So it was all those people trying to fit in so that they met the capacity before they were turned away, because we do have capacity limits on certain rooms on how many people can be there. So I do know that picture was swirling around. I can tell you that it's not as bad as that picture you saw. That was just because of a lot of people.
It's a good point. It's a good point that it's first come, first serve on the Panther Hour.
And you also have to think about freshman and sophomore. That's we have 2 grades of sophomores. Each class is about, I think, 400 to 500 students. So you have 400 to 500 students who've never been around that. So that's almost like 1,000 kids who have never been in the school building trying to navigate and not knowing how Panther Hour works. So you also have to take that into account, that you have a lot of people not knowing where they're going.
What do you see, Mr. Stark, since you're in the hallways a lot?
I see it, if you say Annapolis, then I'll say any other school, because it's the same. I've seen pictures from people where your population is high. It is what it is. And I'm not okaying it. Don't get me wrong when I say that.
But the halls are not overcrowded.
But what they're not saying, you have to be 6 feet apart.
Yeah.
So if that's the language, then that's going to be the outcome.
Yeah, and also I've heard from Crofton High School, which is missing a whole class. They only have up to junior year. I've heard parents say that they believe they're overcrowded already, and they only have 3 classes. They only have freshmen, sophomores, and juniors in that school. So I don't think it's an Annapolis problem. It's the language that the county uses, and therefore the school can't do anything. They can't dismiss 3 feet apart.
Well, I mean, it is overcrowded. Our capacity is 2,083 and we have 2,200 people. So we're at 105% capacity. So we are overcrowded.
Right.
And
correct.
obviously in a pandemic, what you were talking about before, Kenny, using, a transitional or some sort of virtual hybrid would have helped with that capacity, right? And would have lessened the stress of those students who are COVID cautious and feel that they're being shoved back into a place where they can't, they can't distance themselves, and they can't, there's very limited opportunities for eating outside. You have to eat in the crowded cafeteria. If you wanted to go to Panther Hour that day, you had to get into that crowd. So I think, all of those things weigh on the mental case of, but also Annapolis is overcrowded, and we're anticipated to be at 120% by, I think, in the next 5 years. I was just looking at the facilities master plan. I mean, we're not getting less kids, and it's a concern. I think we
don't have it. There's no room to build portables. The swim center's there, so there's no more room to build portables. The only option is to add another level or add on top of previous.
No.
Which
in my opinion,
they can't do.
The only option is to build another high school.
They need to do that, but I don't think Mr. Starks, I'm all in agreement. I think that's what needs to happen. I think that Arundel wasn't as overcrowded when at least when they said who was districted to go to Crofton, from what I saw, Annapolis and South River were at the top for overcrowded, and Annapolis beat South River, and Arundel wasn't even in the running. So we definitely should have had more kids districted. Yeah. So we need another school, and I don't know where they're going to put it, because I don't know if you guys know, but Old Mill's already having a problem getting their new school built, because they're having issues with Spalding saying that they don't want them building on the Papa John's field. So that's that's what I know, because I know people who live over there and who go to Spalding, and they're saying Spalding doesn't want that school there. They think it's gonna, I think, bring negative attention to them, because they think at Old Mill's gonna cause problems. And then they tried to also cover it by saying it's gonna make traffic worse.
Sorry to
But
interrupt.
Old Mill needs to. Old Mill needs to
Conversation,
get a
but
new
let's
school.
Move on to the rest of the agenda, and we can talk more at the end if we want. Moving to unfinished business, we still have meeting plans for 2021-2022 school year on the agenda. The situation with COVID is still fluid, so I am opening the floor on how we want to proceed in scheduling our commission meetings.
I would say, considering if we're virtual, doesn't that allow a lot more people to be in attendance to view it? I guess that's the question. Because if that's the case, then I know we're limited on live. We'll be able to get the members, but we won't be able to get people who want to come in and sit in and find out in their cluster because of COVID restrictions or whatever. So I don't know. I'm not saying virtual is the move, but that's an option if that makes sense. That's my thought.
I agree. I think we get better at, well, I think right now we should stay virtual.
Yes. I'm attending this meeting from many states away traveling. So it does help to be able to participate this way.
Can we invite people, to the meetings? Can other people come in?
Yes. You have to make sure you send their names in advance and get approval from the chair.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Hi, Edie.
I also think it's important because people can watch, right? So we have 4 people watching right now on YouTube. And I think that that's a really important, it's only 4, but it's still, and maybe we get to the point where we have, I would say that even if we get to the point where we're meeting in person, I would like to still offer, I would hope that we could still offer, get an owl camera or some other way to still offer the virtual option, because our audience is families, and I'm lucky to have my husband home right now cooking dinner for the kids, and handling the kids, but not all parents have that opportunity and, may be interested in being here and learning and listening, but aren't necessarily able to come to wherever our meeting is. So I would hope that this would continue no matter what happens.
You don't even need approval from me. Just send in your name, and I try to advertise that across social media.
I think you're seeing that a lot. We had our PTA meeting at Eastport Elementary last night, and we were able to have it outside in our brand new outdoor classroom. Just very excited to be outside and all socially distanced. And we had 7 people join online, and so we were able to, include everybody who wanted to be able to attend. It was great.
I would like to say that Annapolis High had its PTSA meeting last night that I wasn't able to join, but I heard that 45 people attended on Zoom virtually, which is a higher number of attendance than we've ever had before. And it also gives you an indication of how much it is, our One Annapolis community is kind of fired up and
saying, we're not going to put up with this neglect. We want information. We want to be involved. Please keep us in the loop. So that's a positive sign.
Also, we love our high school and we want to be connected. On
Yeah.
the positive side of 45 people.
But another thing, you look at it like everyone is taped, so it's taped on YouTube. So even if you're not live watching it, you can come back and watch it. You know what I mean? And if it's a strictly live situation, then you only have that one opportunity. So I like the virtual, especially being recorded on YouTube, because people can come back and watch it later.
So India, do we have a night?
Do we still want the fourth Wednesday of the month?
Yes.
I'll say yes.
Month works for me, and I think that's good with the Board of Ed, right?
Usually.
But do we have another option? I thought someone was going to check with Sheila to see when she was available. And I do have another meeting on the fourth Wednesday. Didn't somebody say they want to check with her?
Well, Sheila can email us at any time and let us know her schedule. I thought this Wednesday was accommodated around her schedule. But if she's feel free to suggest other times if she can't make this all the time or whatever. She can email India and let her know and just distribute it to the rest of us.
So is this our only option, India?
No, it's not, but that's up to our commission. Also, I have not heard from Hillary about Sheila.
Okay, that's who it was. Okay, it was Hillary, right, who said she was going to check. Do you know what our other option is?
I just went through all of the board meetings and there's no conflict with board meetings. The only day that the fourth Wednesday conflicts with in terms of regular calendar is that it is the night before Thanksgiving. That's the only conflict that I see on calendar in terms of board/US holidays. Obviously, that doesn't take into account your meetings or anything, or Sheila's or anyone else's.
I am not sure at this point with city staff changing roles and supporting the meeting.
Enid, you're saying that you couldn't attend on the fourth Wednesday, is that?
I do have another meeting scheduled because when they asked about the other meeting, I didn't know we were going to keep this as a permanent. I thought this was something we would change it to temporarily. I did not know it was permanent. I thought, I don't know, maybe I misunderstood. Did everybody else understand that when they asked about the fourth Wednesday, that it was going to be permanent?
Yes, I thought it was going to be permanent.
I thought it was because we were trying not to conflict, not only with the board and other standing city meetings, but also the high school PTSA, as we talked about, because it is the one community and we're going to conflict with any PTA or PTSA, that's the one we definitely don't want to, since we all end up there. But if there is, I'm happy to entertain other.
Do we want to just do the fourth Wednesday in October again and ask once more about the options moving into November?
That sounds good.
Sure, sounds good.
That sounds fair.
That works for me.
Okay, moving to the next item. Odessa, you are up with filters.
Oh, okay. I did talk to Darren Smith. He's the chief custodian at Annapolis High School. And he sent me some slides showing all the different filters. But as of September the 2nd, all filters have been changed in the school. And that's all he said. I can send the email to you, Madam President, and so that you can see the filters, because I don't know how to present them on screen. But yes, he says all filters have been changed as of September 2nd. And then I'll send you the email that he sent me. Is that okay? Okay.
I'd like to ask where we are in comparison to other school systems where Dr. Arlotto and staff have told people that, well, PTAs can go ahead and buy additional filtration systems for their school, but AACPS is proceeding with their normal upgraded maintenance. So again, it presents inequities that our PTSA budget is, approximately $7,000 to $9,000, and our sister schools are in the $40,000 to $50,000 to $60,000 PTA budgets. So, how are we dealing equitably with clean air?
So everybody should be breathing better at the high school anyway, since they have clean filters.
Well, I will say that I submitted on September 8th a Public Information Act request asking for the air change rate and measured CO2 levels of each cluster, of each classroom in each school in the Annapolis cluster, when they were tested and what mitigations efforts were done to improve any elevated CO2 levels, as well as the AACPS plan for ongoing testing and monitoring of these levels in all classrooms. I know that the governor has mandated that school systems provide this information due to some issues in some of the other school systems in the state. I have not heard back on that public information request, but as soon as I do, I will share that information, because I think that's, if we're not, we can say there's new filters, or we can say, I think having the facts, I think, is really important. So that we can look at them and say, okay, yes, this is great, and this is what we need to do. And then, if there are schools where the rates, then maybe we could focus as a group and as a PTA group, all of us together, to say, okay, this school seemed to have a bigger problem. Maybe we can focus on getting purifiers for that school. This school has fantastic air change rates, and we don't need to worry about it as much. But I do think, especially as we move into the winter months with more indoor time, precisely because of what Janet said, there's our PTAs, our schools don't have the resources that maybe some other clusters or some other school systems do to provide those resources. Like Baltimore City, I think, provided air purifiers for every single classroom in the city, which would be fantastic to see in Anne Arundel County. But I thought if we could at least focus on the cluster to start and see what we could do. So I'm looking forward to receiving that information, hopefully.
Thanks for submitting that, Jess. If people don't know, Public Information Act requests, the Maryland law, have to be replied to within 30 days, or there's some repercussions to the PIA ombudsman and stuff. So by October 8th, hopefully we will have an answer on that.
if anyone needs assistance in the format of how to ask for a Public Information Act request, or I'm happy to circulate the email template of just the words to use. It's very simple. You send one to Mr. Mosier, and then the time clock starts ticking.
Any other discussion on air purifiers? I know we tried to contact all Annapolis PTAs to request funds as a group, but only a few replied and we haven't submitted the request yet.
I'm sorry, India. What's the funds for?
Air purifiers, it would be from the COVID relief funds.
Oh, okay.
The city said that they would prefer that we work with the PTAs to ask for the money rather than the city asking for the money out of the COVID relief funds.
Okay.
I will say when I went to pull up that email, just going back to that, I did get an email from Mr. Mosier apologizing for the Spanish messaging today and saying that they have made great strides in his view to add Spanish messaging in multiple platforms to our communications, and there are more to come, but that the error was on him and he apologizes.
No,
Anything
anybody
else
know,
before we move to new business?
anybody know the condition, Mr. Starks, of the two young men? I heard it was one, but on the news it's saying two young men were stabbed. Is that true too?
I'm gonna be honest. I'm not going to really speak on any particulars on that. That's not my place. I will say, to speak what Jess just said, I want to commend Moses for getting back and addressing it. That's huge to me. Accountability is, to me, is like huge in leadership, right? And that's the first start, right? We are where we are, and it's okay if we're not willing to stay there. And that's the beauty of this, right? So I want to say thank you to him, and thank you for just making it public, so that could be an issue. And I think that's what this commission is about. Focusing on the hard details of that fight. I don't know if that's how
No, I just
important
want to know how the young people are. I mean, we don't know
I
how.
think they're fine. To my knowledge, they're fine. The kids, everyone involved is okay as far as physically, and that's a blessing. So I would say
The
that.
Capitol had a story posted at 4:45 today, Odessa, so we can send you that link.
Okay, well, I have the Capitol paper.
Okay,
Oh,
well,
okay.
it posted late this afternoon.
Oh, okay, so it'll probably be in tomorrow.
Yeah,
It'll be in tomorrow's paper.
yes. One of the kids was taken to a specialty hand hospital in Baltimore for possible impacts to his hand.
Okay, thank you. Mhm.
Okay, moving to new business. Janet, we are at the food and nutrition agenda item.
So maybe Jess can add additional information on this, but from the feedback we're getting from parents is that the food services has gone way down this year in terms of, portions, what they're getting. I'm getting texts and pictures from parents where expired products are being served, expired milk, expired cheese sticks, juice boxes, whatever. And parents are calling me saying, I'm working. Can you please go bring some food to my son who's starving? and overcrowding in the cafeteria, not allowing people, like they can't get a hot meal because the lines are so long that it takes up their entire, lunch period just to try and get a meal. And then there's cold food in the kiosk that's not sufficient for growing teenage bodies. So I'd like that to be looked into. That's going to make kids cranky.
And that's the one advantage of the Panther Hour. I think they have a longer time to eat because the 4 lunches would be what, 25 minutes?
Right.
And that's, by the time, like you said, you get in line, that's no time at all. Ooh.
It gives them more option. Kayla had to go. It would have been nice. Maybe we can ask what her perspective is on this and discuss it at the next meeting, or maybe have some discussions in the meantime to see what her thoughts are and what we can do. And I know it's not only Annapolis High School. I think, this is an issue I've heard about, food running out at 5th grade or whatever the last lunch period is. And I know that every year there's always some adjusting as the food services tries to figure out how many kids are there and how many, but I think in a year when we're feeding everybody, we should be making sure if we're going to say we're going to feed everybody, we should be making sure that there's, and I will use this opportunity to remind everybody who is watching or everybody who is listening, and to remind the people that you are connected with and in your ward to please fill out the free and reduced meals application today. Tomorrow, September 30th is the deadline. That's a really important deadline for our schools to receive funding, particularly at the elementary school level, but at all levels, based on the number of students who qualify. So even if you don't think you're going to qualify, please fill out the forms. Please spread the word, post it on your Facebook page. The link is on the AACPS website. If you look up if you Google AACPS free and reduced meals, it'll come right up. And there is a link. It's an online application. It's easy to do as long as it's not bogged down, which sometimes gets, but it's really important to get an accurate representation of the need within our community so that we can service. And it's not only about food. That number determines resource teachers. That number determines, all sorts of funding for the schools. So please spread the word and get people by tomorrow. I think September 30th is the deadline for it to matter for next year. So please encourage everyone to fill it out and to share that information.
Any other new business?
I'd just like to report again that our attendance secretary, Ms. Graves at Annapolis High School, is out on some medical leave issues, and she's trying to deal with the backlog, but of recording kids' absences. Again, the bus chaos is then making students late to school and missing school, and then it piles on to become a negative mark against Annapolis High School. Excuse me, for the number of recorded absences we have. So the school system needs to figure that out on their own and not dump it onto Annapolis High. Central office needs to figure that out.
And it's not Annapolis High School, it's across the board. And the same thing comes with quarantining. If you have children who are quarantining, please make sure you're checking Power School and that your absences are being recorded as quarantines, not as unexcused absences. It's an issue that's happening. As Dr. Alato said, in the spring, they're flying the plane as they're building it still. And so, we really all need to be on top of each other and help each other to know where these, where these holes are so that we can take care of our community. So thank you, Janet, for pointing that out. And, please make sure that everybody is, doing that. Could we do a motion to thank the teachers, staff, and SROs at Annapolis High School for keeping our community safe today and reacting quickly? Is that something?
I second that idea.
So I guess I'll
The
take it.
problem with that, Jess, is that we're limited to what we have hearsay, basically. I mean, Taylor was the only one that was actually there, and Mr. Starr.
My kid was there. I know what he told me, and I know what his friends told me on the way home from school. I mean, I see your point. So,
I mean, I may very well run into someone tomorrow who may say the opposite. I was not there. And I mean, I'm so happy to hear that people feel that way. Don't get me wrong. But I personally don't want to, respond to something that I personally did not see or get a firsthand view of, or
I just think that, we have some issues that needs to be addressed, and, I mean, I'm happy to hear that no one was seriously injured or hurt. But the previous fights, I mean, we have an advocate out now that's out on sick leave on compensation because she injured herself. And as a matter of fact, I'm told a couple of advocates have been injured in the previous fights. So it's some things that we need to look at and address. It's going to take time, and it's going to take, like you said, the community and everybody working together. That's what I heard Dr. Alada say today. We all need to work together, but we need to really address these issues. We just can't just assume that because it wasn't that serious that everything is okay. It's some serious
Right.
things that's
Now,
going on.
can I say that two things can simultaneously be correct? That today, that a huge shout out is deserved for the staff that was there and maintaining safety, regardless to how anyone feels about the staff, period. That was huge. I was in the middle and witnessed it. I saw it. It could have been a whole lot worse. You got to hear it. It was a one accord moment. Now, here's the other piece. Could we have been doing, and still do a lot better? Absolutely. But I don't think those two should be held together at the same time in this regard, because I think the statement was for today and how today went. Can we just say thank you to that movement? We're not saying in that moment, hey, y'all been doing a great job since day one. You had a great game plan since the beginning. We believe all of these things. No, we're not saying that. We're saying at this moment, can this be true? Does that make sense?
I think that makes a lot of sense. So I wrote it this way. Kenny, tell me what, and everyone tell me what you think. The Annapolis Education Commission motions to thank those staff, teachers, and SROs who kept students safe at Annapolis High School on 9/29/21.
And to me, it's like this. To any disaster that happens in the community and first responders show up and do a great job that day, it doesn't take away from how anyone feels, how great they responded in the times past or anything, but it speaks on that particular day. Does that mean, you know what I mean? So I think.
Did you all see Jeff McCrease is in the chat box putting in comments?
Seconded the motion. So the motion on the floor, Jeff seconded it, is the Annapolis Education Commission motions to thank those staff, teachers, and SROs who kept students safe at Annapolis High School on 9/29/21.
Any other discussion on the motion?
And it does not in any way, obviously, negate the many things that we need to do as a community to keep this from happening again and to work together and create a better community.
But can we make a motion, after this one is voted on, can we make a motion that we try to address those issues to make sure that the commission stays on it, to make sure that we are addressing the issues in the communities?
Sure, I'd say any member who wants to make a motion should draft up some wording, and I think many of us would likely be in support of those concepts.
Well, let me see.
Okay, all
I'll
in
try.
favor of this motion?
We have to finish this motion first, right?
Right, did you ask who's in favor? Okay, she asked who's in favor of this motion.
Aye.
Janet says yes.
I say yes. Stark says yes.
Any objection? Any abstain? Okay, motion passes. Odessa, you can move to yours.
Okay, let me see if I can word it correctly. I make a motion that the Annapolis Education Commission continue to address the issues that may have caused the events of today, and that we will not let it just be. Let me see, how can I say that? Somebody help me, help me, help me. And that we will, continue to address the issues that's causing the problems in Annapolis High School, especially once these events roll over into the high school that's coming from the community. We need to know what we can do to help resolve these issues or these problems so that this won't happen again. Can you sum it up for me, India?
Well, could we, I mean, because you say in the Annapolis Education Commission, can we also say the Board of
Good afternoon.
Education, as well as community leaders be urged to, and then whatever you say, not just the commission?
Okay, that's fine. It's just that it's important, I think, to continue to.
Biology. Oh my God, that class in high school. Oh my God.
Didn't you have fun?
No, cutting up the
What's-
frogs and things
is
like
something
that.
wrong?
Like that.
Science and biology.
Janet, you're muted. Janet,
You
mute.
need to know how to cut them up in order to help them.
No, you guys are.
Hello?
brilliant. I admire you immensely. I just
No.
couldn't handle it.
We all have different skills.
Okay.
That's
Josh,
what
can
we
you
do
mute
for
Janet,
us.
please? Thanks. I wrote something out, I think, in the chat, unless Jen, or Indy, have you been writing it out, or do you want me to?
Can you read it?
Ahead.
It's in the chat. You said, Jessica?
The motion
Jen-
that the Annapolis Education Commission work with ACPS and the city of Annapolis, continue to work, continue. or no.
To
Motion that
address,
the Annapolis Education Commission work with the ACPS and the city of Annapolis to address the issues that led to the events on 9/29/21 at Annapolis High School, to work to understand what led to these issues within the Annapolis community,
yes. Mhm.
and how we as a community
And
Can-
commission,
and commission can
help
help
resolve.
solve,
Mhm.
help resolve.
Yes.
So I put it in the chat.
Is there a second?
I'll
I'll
second it.
second it.
Kenny seconded. It's fine.
Any other discussion?
Well, I think did we say along with AACPS in the city of Annapolis? What did we say?
Yes.
Okay.
Want me to read it again?
Uh-huh.
Okay, that we motion that the Annapolis Education Commission work with ACPS and the city of Annapolis to address the issues that led to the events on 9/29/21 at Annapolis High School, to work to understand what led to these issues within the Annapolis community and how we as a community and commission can help resolve them.
Great. Okay, that sounds wonderful, Jess.
Okay. Okay, all in favor.
Aye.
Janet says aye.
Kenny, can you vote before you jump off?
Yes. Aye.
Jeff says aye. Can you see that, India? He's putting his thumb up.
Any objection? Any abstain?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Anything else?
Well, I
Okay.
just want everybody to know that I'm no longer at the high school. I may be retiring. I haven't put my papers in yet, but I'm sure I'm on my way out of there. So, but it's been nice, and some of the kids I still stay in contact with. The the Black History Club is still operating, so I'll be working with the club and the community. I go to food giveaways every week, 2 or 3 times a week, and I take food down to the different neighborhoods and over to the high rise in Glenwood. And I love it. I love doing that. I give diapers away, wipes away, everything. So if you know anybody who needs any diapers and wipes, let me know.
Well,
But
we
it's
know that you won't stop working even though you're not at the school, that's for sure.
okay. It's been fun.
And we appreciate everything that you have done.
Thank you, Jess.
And you'll still be here, so.
Right. Yes. Yeah. I'm in the neighborhood, so I'll be reporting what I seem to hear. And like I may call Mr. Jelinas tomorrow and just let him know that there's one of the young men. I'm not condoning his behavior, but I mean, he just lost his mother about like a month ago, and people didn't even know that. I'm just so surprised. I mean, how can we let people know what's going on from the neighborhoods? I don't know.
Well, the other issue, Odessa, too, is the Privacy Act. A lot of times people don't say anything because you can't. You can't. So.
You can't tell someone that their mother passed away?
It depends on the circumstances. I know there have been many times I've tried to help kids, but because of the Privacy Act, I wasn't given information in order to do that. And I was trying to be helpful.
Mm-hmm. Okay. But I mean, that's all part of some of the problems. I mean, that part of that motion we just passed, and part of I just think that maybe to a guidance counselor or someone to let them know that what's going on. I mean, how far can we reveal information? So you're saying that we have to be very careful as the information we give to the school. Is that what you're saying, Ina? Was that Ina?
I'm not saying that we have to be careful. If we have to be careful who we give it to, why we give it to them, and what is regurgitated.
Okay.
I'd like to, if we could add to the next meeting's agenda, an update on COVID and the COVID situation and the virtual schooling. I think that probably would have been more of a discussion tonight were it not for today's event. But I think I'd like to add that to the agenda. If that's possible.
So as far as the virtual schooling, you just want to know how that's coming along or what?
I'd like to know, within a month where we are with the Bright Space, virtual tutors, the whole situation, the situation as a whole.
Mhm.
I'd also like to make an announcement. The
Nothing.
school system just sent an email out and said that Panther Hour is going to be taken away starting tomorrow for a more structured spell schedule that includes a rotation of 4 lunches during third period. And the plan is to return to Panther Hour soon so that students can take advantage of that. The temporary adjustment will allow our staff to closely evaluate various supervisory and safety components of the school day and allow us to use the Panther community to emphasize the best ways for each student to make the most of their time during Panther Hour.
Seeing nothing else, thanks to all the fabulous people in attendance and watching, meeting adjourned.
Thank you, India. You did a great job. Good night, everybody.